Cyberpunk 2077 is right on the cusp of becoming a major franchise. 4 years after the initial launch of the game, they are still updating it. There is a live-action show in production, and the same studio behind Edgerunners is also working on another anime. There are constantly new comics, novels, and the Red series is also expanding. The future of Cyberpunk is bright, which leads me to Orion, the actual 2077 sequel. As of right now, we know next to nothing about it, other than the studio is hiring, and as of the latest update from October, there were only 64 devs working on Orion, but The Witcher 4 moved into full-scale production and is currently their focus. It'll be a while before we actually start getting real Orion news, but we did get an update from R. Talsorian and CDPR working together in April of last year, no doubt working on Orion's story and the future of the cyberpunk world. 2077 left us with several mysteries and open story threads, from the Blackwall to Mr. Blue Eyes. There are many ways Orion could go, but here's what I'm hoping to see. First, the Blackwall. Everything surrounding Alt, Netwatch, Songbird, and the Blackwall leaves a million questions, but ultimately they all have one thing in common. The Blackwall is dangerous, mysterious, and probably going to collapse. Originally developed by Netwatch, it is intended to keep rogue AIs trapped on the other side. But from 2077, we learn that the Blackwall is a more powerful AI, and is essentially just a temporary band-aid solution. The danger of it collapsing is imminent, and the Blackwall itself could even go rogue, considering it is an AI. And everyone is interested in what's on the other side. NUSA, Militech, the Voodoo Boys, and even Maelstrom. We also know that the rogue AIs trapped on the other side are beginning to break free of the Blackwall, and the use of it has bled into the physical world. Songbird uses the Blackwall, V uses the Blackwall, and we see weapons and decks that are also connected to rogue AIs from the other side. The quest with Lilith is a rogue AI brought from the other side of the Blackwall, and she, like the two rogue AI-infected pieces V can find in the Cynosure lab, are both very hostile and do not care for human life at all. If more rogue AIs are freed, who knows what they would do in the physical world? Maybe like Paralysis' quest, more people would have their minds taken over. Maybe they'd take over the net, or inhabit more tech. Maybe instead of cyber psychos, we see a new Blackwall psycho. The potential for rogue AIs dismantling or escaping the Blackwall could be catastrophic. We've seen how powerful Songbird was. I can't imagine several of her. Even the Voodoo Boys know something is going to happen, and they want to contact Alt and breach the Blackwall to make allies with the rogue AIs. It's honestly a pretty stupid plan considering how hostile the rogue AIs seem to be, and how dangerous the Blackwall is. And they're just one of many trying to use the rogue AIs for their own benefit. I can't imagine the rogue AIs or the Blackwall particularly like the way humans are trying to manipulate and use them. On the other side of this, if Mr. Blue Eyes himself is a rogue AI, and he's using Songbird and the other rogue AIs for whatever it is that he's up to, that could be even worse. Mr. Blue Eyes is one of 2077's most interesting mysteries. He's connected to several plot threads, sending Songbird to the moon, watching Jefferson Paralysis, sending V to Crystal Palace, and Gary the Prophet's incoherent but revealing rants. Is he behind the Paralysis' minds being rewritten and controlled? And why was he watching him? What purpose would Mr. Blue Eyes need to manipulate politics? Is he going to use Songbird and her access to the Blackwall for his own gain? Why did he send V to the Crystal Palace? And what does he want with it? And is he a techno-necromancer from Alpha Centauri? There are many questions around Mr. Blue Eyes, and his involvement in pretty much everything. And I hope we find out who he is, what he is, and what he's doing in Orion. Everything around the Blackwall, rogue AIs, and the net also brings us back to the Queen of the Net herself. Alt Cunningham. Alt is one of Night City's most famous netrunners, and by 2077, she has been within the net since 2013, and what she's been doing all that time is mostly unknown. Years later, when Spider Murphy was freeing the new digital version of Alt from Arasaka, she would spread several different pieces of Alt throughout the net, in hopes of finding them later. This means that there could still be multiple pieces of Alt running around the net. From here, she'd go on to master the net, and during this time, she even created a ghost world in what used to be Hong Kong. This ghost world was a digital haven for those affected by Soulkiller. She is powerful, and we don't really know what she's been up to all this time. And at the end of 2077, she either has V or Johnny beside her. What is she planning, and what is she doing with the Blackwall? Furthermore, is she Angel, the woman who has Johnny Silverhand's real body from the night of the Arasaka Towers? Will that mystery ever be solved? Will we find out why she has Johnny's body and what she did with it? Will we learn how she got a new body for herself? There's a million questions around her existence and what she plans to do and has done. I absolutely think that Alt has to return. Her story doesn't feel over yet. She feels intrinsic to whatever story is next. Maybe she could even be an antagonist. There is a lot of story within 2077 that is left unanswered, and some of this you wouldn't know unless you read the source books and read the true events from the night at the Arasaka Tower bombing. And from those true events, the biggest question is, where is Morgan Blackhand? Famed solo Blackhand is missing from Johnny's memories. The night of the Arasaka bombings, that was Blackhand running the operation, not Johnny. The confrontation with Atom Smasher on the roof, that was also Blackhand and not Johnny again. And yet, Johnny's memories have replaced everything that should be Blackhand with himself. And on top of that, he's missing entirely from the events of that night. With Claire's comments saying Blackhand hasn't decided if he's alive or dead, it leaves room for him to appear. And Mike Pondsmith has already spoken about adding to Morgan Blackhand's story, saying me and my opposite at CDPR Patrick are planning a whole backstory about what Morgan Blackhand has been doing since the nuke. And I know the fandom likes to say that Blackhand won't show up because it's Mike's character, and Pondsmith told them not to use him. But Pondsmith actually said, the deal is that I have a few things I need to do with him in the timeline before CDPR gets to play with him, implying that eventually CDPR will get to include Blackhand. And if Pondsmith is already working with his CDPR counterpart Patrick to flesh out his backstory, that means he has more story coming. Maybe in the game, maybe in the Red Books, I don't know. But I really do think he'll show up in Orion, and I absolutely think he should. I want to know the truth of that night at the Arasaka Towers, and what Blackhand has been up to since then. We know that he was previously involved with Militech, but rumors are that he was also a secret government agent. There's also a rumor of a shootout in Japantown, where several Lazarus agents were killed by a portly man with a black cyber arm. That's really all we have of his possible recent activity. Rumors. Another prominent character from the source books that actually makes an appearance in 2077 is famed netrunner Rache Bartmoss. But is this really him? Rache Bartmoss is one of my favorite characters. He is a little freak, obsessive and extremely paranoid and intelligent. He is intrinsic to Night City's history, being behind the data crash of 2022 that changed Night City forever. And yes, we see him in 2077, but hear me out. I don't think this is him. For a man so obsessive and so intentional about being able to access the net, and with several backup plans and several safety nets, I don't think there's any way that Rache would have let his body expire like this. This is the sign of someone who slipped up. And while Rache has slipped up and got caught, if it is something that was in his control and was this important, There's no way he would let his body expire in an old tank from an expired contract. That just isn't like him. Yes, Johnny says he recognizes him, but what if Johnny's memories have intentionally been altered to not remember? Maybe this is a clone, a distraction. I don't know. But there is something about this that feels off. I believe Rache's body is still out there, maybe in a tank that hasn't expired. And this was some kind of decoy, a distraction. For what, I don't know. Maybe this was one of several backup plans. But I believe he's still in the net after his physical body died in 2022. Maybe him, Spider-Murphy, and Alt are planning something. Alongside Rache, the whereabouts of Spider-Murphy are unknown, and she's mentioned several times throughout the game, and is seen in Johnny's flashbacks. And yet, nothing is really known of what she's been up to. It's been complete silence. If Orion revolves around anything involving the net, then one of Alt's friends and skilled netrunners would be a good person to bring back. The activity of Rache, Spider-Murphy, and Alt between the 2020s and 2077 are mostly unknown. Why did they go dark? Where have Bartmoss, Blackhand, and Murphy been? Could they be involved with what's to come? The Blackwall breaking and a possible rogue AI invasion? Or maybe another corpo war? Blackhand's potential activities with possibly being a secret agent, and with everything we learned in Phantom Liberty, we know that NUSA has been accessing the Blackwall. But why? Why would the government need access to the Blackwall? What are they planning? Padre mentions that everything he's seen tells that Arasaka is trying to start a new war with Militech. So what does Arasaka look like following the events of 2077? Will Militech or Netwatch try to use the Cynosure facilities again? Did what happened there with Songbird change anything? Did those rogue AIs escaping break the Blackwall more? Is that just a tease of what's to come? There's also an unanswered question from the beginning of the Corpo Path, where we see the entire European Space Council being killed, ordered by Jenkins, V's boss and an Arasaka counterintelligence operative. Arasaka has no problem wiping out the entire council for trying to stand against them. Tensions are rising, and we've seen with Phantom Liberty, the line between the Blackwall and the physical world has been crossed. Who knows what this could mean if there is a full-scale Corpo War? Who knows what a Corpo War would mean for Night City? And what the Corpos have access to. There's so much potential just in Night City, but it does make me wonder if Orion will let us leave Night City, considering it's kind of the beating heart of the cyberpunk world. But if we do, I would love to see two specific locations: the Crystal Palace and the Moon. There was the cut DLC that revolved around the Moon, so we know at one point CDPR did want to go there. Unfortunately, this information came from the 2021 CD Projekt Red hack, but the Moon DLC was in the conceptual phase, so there wasn't really a ton of information. But it would be interesting to go there. We also have two important characters who can end up on the Moon: Lucy from Edgerunners and Songbird if you choose to help her get there. And surprise, it's Mr. Blue Eyes who was the one to help her. So what is he doing on the Moon? And where is he sending her? Whatever they're doing there, this does leave the potential for cameos. But there's already a lot of established lore in the cyberpunk world that revolves around the Moon. First colonized in 1997, the Moon already has established colonies. The Eurospace Agency established Tycho, and after that, the Moon became easier to colonize than open space. The supplies on the Moon were so plentiful that they also helped in the construction of the Crystal Palace. As of 2077, Arasaka and Militech have mining operations on the Moon, and it is still maintained by the ESA. There is a vast tunnel network and two main underground cities, Tycho and Copernicus. With the death of the entire European Space Council and the resources on the Moon, will a Corpo War include a fight over the Moon and its mineral mining as well? Despite Cyberpunk centering capitalism and its impending doom on the world, the corporations in the world of Night City are fascinating. I want to know more about Arasaka, Night Corp, Trauma Team, MaxTac, Biotechnica, Zetatech, King Tao, Militech, and especially Netwatch. The histories of these corporations and their conflicts and activities are oddly extremely interesting. What experiments is Biotechnica performing on nomads? And what have they been doing with their cloning capabilities? Are werewolves real? Why is Night Corp mind controlling their employees? What are they doing with human DNA on the moon? And what is Project Oracle? There are so many mysteries within the world, and so many involve the mistreatment and exploitation of the people in Night City. Which is really no surprise. Night City and its owners have little to no regard for the lives that inhabit their city. They are there to be used, exploited, and killed for the gains of the corporations. There are no happy endings in Night City, but there's also no good corporations. I want to see those dynamics. Maybe even play as another corpo, but from a different path than Arasaka. Let us see behind the curtain of these mega corporations and their illicit activities, and let us see how they're profiting off of and ruining the lives of those in Night City. 2077's themes of death and humanity are part of the core narrative. And I hope with V's story being about facing death and terminal illness, we still see these themes in Orion. Cyberpunk explores the line between human and technology, and when those lines are crossed in both directions. The line is blurred and becomes indefinable. And I think those story threads are my favorite. Is Johnny alive? Is V alive after also becoming an engram? Where is the line? Is Alt alive? Is a version of Alt that may be in a new body alive? There's no answer, just questions. But I love these questions, and although I don't think we'll have another Johnny Silverhand in our head, I hope these similar questions are still asked, even if they're not the main focus. I really have no idea what to expect with Orion's protagonist. And honestly, I know a lot of people want V back, but I just think it doesn't make sense. I think their story is over. Cyberpunk is a world where the world itself is more the main character than you. Night City and Johnny, Alt, Arasaka, those are the stationary defining story beats. And your character and the characters you create for the tabletop game to play missions and create stories with are fleeting. It's Night City that lives on. So I think Orion will have a new protagonist, and I think they're going to have to reinvent what that means. V's story is so iconic because of their relationship with Johnny. The engram is the catalyst to the story, and V's defining experience, this dead man in their head, it's almost gimmicky, and repeating it wouldn't feel genuine, I don't think. So I don't think they'll just repeat that again. But what does that protagonist for Orion then even look like? I think Cyberpunk can succeed where the Dragon Age series failed. Dragon Age, the world was the defining constant. Not the art style, the combat, the mechanics. The only consistent identity was that it took place in Thetis. And I think Cyberpunk could be the opposite. The art style, Night City, the mechanics, the world, they all can stay connected while the protagonist changes every time. I think Cyberpunk would work great like that. But of course we know nothing about Orion, so anything is really possible now. But no matter who the protagonist is, I do hope we get a little bit more third person. I think 2077 makes sense to have the story in first person, especially with Johnny, but also the other experiences of Cyberware, combat, the net. Those are also best experienced in first person as well. I don't know if Cyberpunk will move away from that, but I would definitely like to see my character more. Which brings me to Cyberware. I loved how when we changed out certain pieces, then the way our hands or body would look different accordingly. But there were so many interesting pieces that we just couldn't use, like Hanako's fingers or Takamura's neck piece. While I'm all for unique NPCs, it was a tease to have so much stuff that we couldn't use. So I hope Orion takes the Cyberware a step further. Let us mod our bodies more and just get weirder with it. I want full body mods and exotics. Let me have cat ears or a tail. Let me turn into a cheetah or a shark. Those are probably a bit unrealistic, but there are some really interesting modifications in the source books, and I'd love to see more of them brought in game. Surprisingly, there is actually already one exotic in 2077, a man with snakeskin. You can't see most of his face, but his scales and bluish skin are very noticeable. Denzel Cryer is the only example of an exotic we actually see, but there's some other exotics in the source books, ranging from sharks to full Borgs. Again, I just want them to get weird with it. With this, I also hope whatever protagonist that we have has more customizable options. Throughout the life of 2077, they have added quite a bit, but I'd still like to see more. Yes, I'm greedy, but more hair options, more face cyberware options, and better skin tone options would be great. And now for a controversial opinion, apparently. Something I would like to see Orion improve on from 2077 is the romances. I want more choices. 2077 has some very good romances, but the gender locking really limits the options. I am okay with romances being gender locked, and I think it's great when characters have preferences. But when you only have 4 options in total, it means that most people will only get one choice. I usually prefer to romance women in games, so I had Judy. River if I wanted to, but essentially I feel like I only had one choice. So no choice. I hope with Orion they realize how much people enjoy romance content and just simply add more variety. If there's a small amount of choices, I hope they aren't gender locked in the same way again. And obviously, I don't want variety and choice just for the sake of it. The romances need to have good writing and depth and relevance, so I hope they can find a good balance with that. I did like the romance content in 2077, and for a story that takes place in such a short amount of time, I thought it made sense. But for Orion, I just hope that there is a little bit more variety. And lastly, the thing that I want the most for Orion is that the game connects more to the source books. I loved Phantom Liberty. It's an amazing DLC. But my problem with it is that it doesn't feel like it has enough connections to the source books like the base game does. Maybe that was intentional. That way CDPR could write whatever they wanted, use the characters and do whatever with them that they could. But for me, I love the source books. There is so many good stories and characters, and everything that's already connected to 2077 is kind of in there. The foundation has been laid. So for Orion, I do hope that we see more of that. I want to see Morgan Blackhand, Rache Bartmoss, Spider Murphy. I want to learn more about Alt Cunningham and what she's been up to. And my favorite part about 2077 was playing the story and then reading the source books and finding out the truth, that almost everything that we know is not the truth, that Johnny was lying, even though he didn't really mean to. The night of the Arasaka Tower bombings and what we see in game isn't an accurate representation of what actually happened. So the source book tells you the truth, and I loved that. Going back and connecting all the dots and figuring out what actually happened was so exciting. I thought it was such a great way to write the game. And it made every playthrough after knowing the truth so much better. You look back at the things that the characters have said, the way Johnny tells you that it was his idea to take Rogue to the movies, but then she tells you that it was her idea. The way the corpo background tells you that there's an urban legend that Johnny haunts the Arasaka Towers, of a ghost that was split in 2, which is what happened in the source books, but not in Johnny's memories. There are so many small details. It is such great writing. And I hope we see that again. I hope Orion connects to the source books and intertwines with them and shares the same stories and characters. That is what I really, really want to see. So that is everything that I want to see for Orion. I don't really know what to expect. We know literally nothing of it. And I don't think we'll start to see anything about Orion until Witcher 4 ships. So I think it's going to be a while. In the meantime, though, we have the live action show, we have the animated show, and a bunch of comics and books that have been coming out. But let me know what you want to see for Orion, what you want to see in the cyberpunk world. Do you want to go to other places? Is there characters from the source books that you also want to meet? And what story threads from 2077 do you want to see continue in Orion? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Unfortunately, I am still sick and this was very hard to record, so I'm sorry my voice sounds weird again, but thank you for being patient. If you are still here, thank you for listening. And thank you so much to my Patreons and my channel members. I haven't really had a lot of content lately because I've just been recovering, so thank you so much for your patience and still supporting me during this time. I am so thankful. That is all for today. Thank you for watching and see you next time.